Greetings, YouTube. Apologize for the blanket and the cat, but I'm a little chilly and she doesn't care whether I want her there or not. Today I'm going to be talking about some more of the Overkill Gamma World notes that I wrote ages in the past. Today I'm going to talk about some of the gangs that existed in the New Tau campaign that became known as Overkill. Now I broke these down into a coding system, and I had them based on gang size, gang stability, and the gang's economic power. I used a system of 3 scores for each, 1, 2, and 3 for size, 1 being 12 or fewer members, just barely functioning as a gang. A score of 2, which would have been 13 to 36 members, a acceptable number of individuals that become a credible threat. And then you had scores of 3 or higher. 3 would meant 36 members or more, so it became a very significant danger to people. Then we had gang stability, which was broken into capital A, B, and C. Unstable would last 1 to 3 years. These are groups that come together. They usually focus around a single individual, or maybe a neighborhood or a family of some variety. And when that power base is undermined, killed, arrested, what have you, the gang disintegrates. The 2 was a B was a stable, will last 5 to 15 years. They get a rep, they function for a while, but eventually interior fracturing, legal problems, or gang warfare will cause their downfall. And the last was a capital C, which is because a social fixture. This will last generations. Then we had gang economic power, and I used A, B, and C with lowercase here. So a gang could have a code like 2BB, which would mean medium size, somewhat stable, and some economic power. The economic power ratings were none, poverty level. These people are just scraping by. A score of B was some, equal to like kind of a middle class economic ability to draw on resources. And the last was great. They have a lot of money and equipment available to them. So these are the gangs I use. Now there was a difference, at least to me, between a gang and a adventuring party. Now an adventuring group or a mercenary group were more above board. Both of these groups were taking contracts to do research, field work, hunting down items, returning captives, finding lost people, or going after a particular defensive position. Gangs, other adventuring parties were doing more of the non-direct military action, while the mercenary units were direct military action, and they were always extracurricular out of the country. You couldn't actually have military units doing actions within the nation of the free range. It wasn't allowed. Gangs, however, they didn't care about the law in the least. They weren't officially sanctioned by the government, and they would take hit contracts, either against individuals or other groups, for money. You want a bunch of people killed, you hire yourself a gang. You want something done in an illicit activity, you hire yourself a gang. Because if you hired yourself an adventuring group or a mercenary group and they did something, they'd have their charter revoked, and they'd be recategorized as gangs, and pretty much a large target would be placed on their head, and the government would hunt them down. So the gangs that we had in my campaign that I used on a semi-regular basis, we had the Urchins, which was actually a decent size and fairly stable, but they were poor. These were street kids. These people joined this because they needed to find some way of surviving on the street, and as they got older and became more capable of handling more complex issues in life, they'd move on. They'd go to other gangs, or they would cease to become gang members. So this was kind of a tactically accepted group. People kind of ignored them so long as they didn't cause too many problems. People realized that individuals in the gang were not going to stay there forever. The gunboats, river pirates, flat out. Somewhat good, decent size, somewhat stable, somewhat well off. They really never played a role in the campaign much. The Black Knights, which were humanoid only. The Kingpins, which I obviously based off of the Kingpin from the Marvel comic, and they were not a large gang, but they were well off, and they were stable. First Strike, and the First Strike was all about the hits. You know, you hired them, they went in, they did something, they left. They were not about long-term processes. You know, they were not into heavy-duty, gun running or drug dealing and things like that. They were very much, you hired them for a single job, they did it, and they moved on. They were a mixed group. Kings of the City, which was small, unstable, and poor. They had great aspirations, however. Goon Squad, which was small, somewhat stable, and somewhat well off, and they are hired muscle known for simple brutality. You know, these are the guys that would bust legs because they like to break legs. The Nightmen, mutant humans only. All of them had some kind of military connection, dishonorably discharged. Some may have gotten out of the military honorably, but they were always very, kind of shady individuals. The Ruffians, this was just up and up, a straight street gang. Max Blasters, all members have energy weapons or energy mutations. It was kind of a requirement to become a member of the gang itself. The Angels of Mercy, these were heavy drug dealers. These people, this is what they did. They provided drugs for those that wanted them. Even though there weren't a lot of laws against drugs, there also weren't necessarily drugs available everywhere, and these people would fill whatever niche hadn't been filled. And they were one of the only people in the city that would deal in black cap, which was a highly illegal drug. Dino Rex. There was a large, unsubtle tactics. They named themselves for the pondering dinosaurs for a reason. The Norms. Human normal looks only, which is kind of unusual in the campaign. That was almost all mutant animals or mutant humans. They looked normal, but they weren't necessarily normal. Hellhounds, mutant animals only, and they actually had an alliance affiliation. The Old Brigade, which was heavily anti-pure strain human, hate group, out and out. They were racists, and they would hunt down pure strain humans, or the ones that they couldn't hunt down directly. They would commit atrocities against it at every opportunity. Chainsaw Roulette, which was a medium-sized, somewhat stable group who had a preference for chainsaws. The Roving Scars, they required ritual disfigurement to join their group. Doomlords, mixed, had a major feud with the Kingpins. These Splatter Men, all of these were people that were into the gladiatorial games, and while they were a gang in name, they were almost more like a biker club in some respects. Let me scroll down here. The Blade Masters, medium-sized, fairly stable, fairly well-off, heavy use of bladed weapons, a requirement when everybody had to carry one and be decent with them. The Screaming Eyesores, and these people were into fashion crimes. Up and up there, the goal was to look the most horrendous they could at all times. The Podogs, canines only, kind of a kids gang. Again, kind of like the Urchins in some regards. The Paladins, biker gang that does good deeds. These were a gang. They were very much kind of like a chaotic good, out to do good, not really caring what laws they had to break to achieve those ends. So they were ignored for the most part, as long as they didn't step on too many toes. The Modest, gentlemen criminals. Land Sharks, mutant animals only, hired muscle, and hitmen. Up and up, these were just thugs. The Furs, furred mutants only. The Greens, these were open to only green-colored mutants or sentient plant mutants. So this was kind of a hippie, grunchy kind of a organization. The Gons, which were, again, in the Game World game, 3rd edition, Gon was the slang for dragon. This was open to reptilian mutants only. The Jesters, these were kind of a fringe group of entertainers, almost like Burning Man, but they never went away. The Supremes, mutant animals only, alliance affiliation, animal supremacists. Highwaymen, mixed, high-tech biker gang, dealing with a lot of technology. So sometimes you'd have to deal with these folks if you wanted a nice piece of technology that only they had access to. The Claw, mixed, small, somewhat stable, somewhat well off, and known for maiming their victims. The Roadhogs, which I stole directly out of the TMNT, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Roadhogs supplement. They should be, I referred to them as a generational nomad biker gang. The King Rats, rodents only, large, stable, somewhat well off. The Watchmen, which no one knew how much money they had, how well off they were. They were a small group, they were stable, and I based this off of the comic book. These are the people that saw themselves as those that struck in the night and stood up for the rights of citizens, and they earned money on the side, let's put it that way. And the last were the Flames, which was a medium-sized, somewhat stable, somewhat well-off group, and all members in the group had to have some kind of mutation that dealt with flame or heat. So these are the groups I used. I would, like, if I found myself bored at some point in the game, it was dragging it down a little here and there, I might just throw gang activity in to spice it up. What was it? Was it Chandler, the author, that said, if you find yourself stuck for an idea, have two guys kick in the door and start shooting? That's what I use the gang for. If I found myself stuck for an idea, have a gang kick in the door and start an action of some variety. And there you go, and I'd have a list of gangs that I could then refer to. So I hope you find this useful. And again, if you'd like copies of my notes, contact me through my email address on my page, or PM me with your email address. And I hope you enjoyed seeing our mutant overlord, Mandarin.